Hi everyone and welcome to another episode of Ask a Property Manager. This is episode number 98 and I am your host, Andrew Schultz, Principal Broker of Own Buffalo Inc. Today is November 24th, 2021, day before Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to all of our American viewers. On today's show, we're going to be taking a look at different appliance brands, who's got the most reliable appliances, as well as what appliance companies own what other appliance companies. We're also going to be taking a look at marketing student rentals for rent. We'll answer some questions from housing providers around the country and so much more. Before we do that, we are going to go ahead and plug our social media. New episodes of Ask a Property Manager every Wednesday, 10 a.m. Eastern. You can catch those live on Facebook or the replay the same day over on YouTube. Don't forget about our Instagram. We post content there that doesn't make it to the other two platforms. And last but not least, don't forget about the Rent Prep for Landlords podcast. The current episode is talking about what to do when a tenant loses their job, renting to traveling professionals, and accepting an applicant's financial aid as a source of income. So very good episode of the podcast. Don't miss out on that. You can listen to that anywhere podcasts are heard or over at rentprep.com/podcast. We're going to go ahead and jump into we're going to start with our news of the day, and then we're going to do our appliance piece. This comes out of News4 Jacksonville. Jacksonville-based Firehouse Subs tells parent company of Popeyes and sells to parent company of Popeyes and Burger King for $1 billion. Jacksonville, Florida, a local restaurant chain in the sandwich business just got a lot more bread. Firehouse Subs, which was founded in Jacksonville in 1994, announced it sold its franchise for $1 billion in cash to Restaurant Brands International, RBI. RBI also owns Tim Hortons, Burger King, and Popeyes. This company actually picked up Tim Hortons. There was a Tim Hortons and Burger King. I don't remember who technically purchased who, but that was a couple years back, and that was a big story here in Western New York because we have so many Tim Hortons locations. We chose RBI because they believe in and are committed to honoring things that are important to us, which are to protect the brand and continue its legacy, to take care of our nearly 800 local employees, to remain headquartered in Jacksonville, and to preserve, foster, and continue the mission of Firehouse Subs Public Safety Foundation. Firehouse Subs founders Chris and Robin Sorensen said in a joint statement. CEO Don Fox told News4 Jacksonville they're starting a new chapter. We're going to make this a little bit larger here. It's a remarkable story in its own right. There are things that a partnership ownership like RBI can bring to the table that to really break this brand out, Fox said. The founders and former firefighters said RBI will bring more resources to the Jacksonville chain to help accelerate our long-held mission to sell more subs and save more lives. The biggest question about the sale is how this will affect the business on a local level, and the CEO told the news station everything will stay the same down to the headquarters staying put right here in Jacksonville off of St. Augustine Road. Locally, you won't see any changes at all, Fox said. Firehouse Subs currently has more than 1,200 restaurants spread across 46 states, Canada, and Puerto Rico, and will close 2021 with system-wide sales of more than $1 billion, the company said. It also has donated 5,399 life-saving grants to local heroes, totaling more than $62.5 million through its foundation. Fox said, as the business expands, the opportunity to give back will also grow, and they plan to expand in a big way with their new owner. RBI is a large player on the international scene, and over time, I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to bring Firehouse to many countries around the world, Fox said. RBI said Firehouse Subs is a strong and growing player in the $30 billion sandwich market in the U.S. Firehouse Subs is a special brand with a talented team, impressive culture, and community focus that resonates with guests and closely aligns with our core values at RBI. We see tremendous potential to accelerate U.S. and international growth at Firehouse Subs with RBI's development expertise, global franchise network, and digital capabilities, said Jose Seals, Chief Executive Officer of RBI. The deal is expected to close in the coming months. We're going to skip through the rest of this article. But basically, I wanted to touch on this. I think it's interesting anytime you see something like this happen because it has a play in multiple spaces. Obviously, this changes the nature of things in the quick service restaurant industry. You know, when you have a company that is now going to be focused on large driven growth, you're going to be looking for a lot of locations where you can set up QSRs. So this is going to have a big impact nationwide, or really it sounds like internationally even, on the QSR market, because you're going to have a large brand, a large, well-recognized brand with a strong backing behind it with RBI, looking to make a major expansion. So this is kind of exciting for the commercial world in a time when commercial's still pretty uncertain and when you still see a lot of places sitting on a ton of vacancy. It's nice to know that there are places that are making large expansion plans, and hopefully that more places are able to do this and kind of consume some of that commercial vacancy backlog that we're seeing right now. We're going to go ahead and jump over to this article from Consumer Reports. Which brands make the most reliable appliances? The best way to find an appliance that will stand the test of time: buy from a reliable brand. Factoring in reliability will save you money over the long haul and keep refrigerators and washers and such machines out of the waste stream and landfills. A good place to start is with the chart below, CR's third annual appliance brand reliability rankings. It shows how reliable one brand is relative to another across multiple appliances: fridges, dishwashers, over-the-range microwaves, ranges, cooktops, wall ovens, washing machines, and dryers. The results are based on survey data we collected from our members on more than 760,000 kitchen and laundry appliances purchased new between 2010 and 2020. To calculate predicted reliability, we ask members whether their appliances broke or stopped working as well as they should. We use that data to estimate how a given brand's new models will hold up over the first 5 years of use. The chart includes only the brands for which we have reliability ratings in at least 2 categories of major appliances. The predicted reliability ratings for appliances from each brand are an average of the ratings for all types of that brand's appliance. For example, front load washers, top load washers, etc. for washing machines. For each brand, the average predicted reliability score has been adjusted to account for differences among types of appliances. A brand that earned relatively high marks for its French door refrigerators, for example, will get a bump in its score because French door models are less reliable than other refrigerator types. Without this statistical adjustment, a brand that only makes top freezers, the most reliable type, would have an unfair advantage over brands that make multiple types. Makes sense. The top and bottom rated brands in the chart remain unchanged. Blomberg is the sole newcomer in this year's rankings. Keep in mind that our predicted reliability ratings are not an indicator of performance, so even when you settle on a reliable brand, you'll want to check out our full appliance ratings to find a specific model. And then they have this chart here, which is actually pretty useful. Across the top, it gives you a general idea of the appliance type, and then down the side, you have the appliance companies, the manufacturers, with a key up here as to quality of the appliances. We've talked about Speed Queen appliances before as far as washers and dryers go. In the commercial world, Speed Queen is the tops when it comes to washers and dryers, which is why it makes, very, very good sense that you would see Speed Queen rated excellent for the washer and dryer categories. Obviously, you've got LG and all the other major names here. But one thing that I did want to point out, and one thing that a lot of people don't realize, is that a lot of appliance manufacturers manufacture more than one appliance brand. We're going to take a look at this article here. I'm actually going to scroll down through here just so you guys can see this whole chart. Feel free to pause if you want to take a look at it, or you could find this over at consumerreports.org. But what I wanted to point out is that there are a lot of appliance brands that are either manufactured by other appliance brands or wholly owned subsidiaries. So this list here kind of breaks things out a little bit. Whirlpool Corporation owns Genair, Maytag, Amana, Roper, and KitchenAid. So let's go back to that list. Whirlpool, Genair, Maytag, Amana, and Roper. Wrong article. And you can see these are all over. Whirlpool, let's see, I thought I saw Genair. Genair is way down here. What was on their list? Amana, Maytag, and Roper. So you can kind of see Maytag, and then Roper, I think, was down here someplace if they're even on the list. Oh, no, they're actually a little bit higher than I thought. So you can see that different appliance brands are going to have different levels of quality, even if they are made by the same manufacturer. That said, a lot of parts you'll find will be parts that can be used in multiple different appliances. Very common for things like belts or motors or compressors to be able to be used in multiple different appliances across multiple different platforms, so that it makes their parts resupply a little bit easier. So there you go. Whirlpool owns Genair, Maytag, Amana, Roper, KitchenAir. Electrolux owns Frigidaire, Tapin, Kelvinator, and Gibson. GE is now owned by Hair. Hair manufactures GE Hotpoint, Cafe, Profile, and Monogram. Samsung owns Samsung and Decor. And then LG is actually the only company that appears to be just LG. They don't appear to manufacture any of the other guys' products or anything like that. So, you know, it's important to understand what it is that you're buying. It's important to take a look at reliability rankings and product reviews and things like that. But you do have to understand that at the end of the day, the appliance that you're buying, even though it may say, let me scroll back down here, even though it may say Roper, which is what I would consider a budget brand, if you will, even though it may say Roper, you're actually getting a Whirlpool appliance. Is that right? Yeah, Whirlpool. You're actually getting a Whirlpool appliance. And you can actually see that Whirlpool did not rank as high as Roper. So it's interesting to see how things compare. And obviously there's a lot of different categories there. You can find this over at Consumer Reports, but I did want to make that mention that there's a lot of different manufacturers that manufacture the same thing. So when you look at any kind of a report like this, you almost have to take it with a big grain of salt. That wraps up our news. I wanted to show you a couple of funny things that I found over the internet this week. This one was posted, I think, in the Rent Prep for Landlords Facebook group, and I got a kick out of it. And I wanted to share that. And then this one. Guys, keep in mind that most real estate agents aren't built for OnlyFans. So if you see us out at a party and nobody's talking to us, come over and say hi. We need the attention. We need the love. All right, let's get to our questions from housing providers around the country here. We're going to start with this one on leasing up a student rental. I have a 4-bedroom home for student rentals. Since each tenant will be jointly and severally liable, good move. How do you go about getting tenants for all 4 bedrooms? I know that sounds like a dumb question, but I'm getting ready to advertise with X a month. If it's one tenant, tenant pays a full rent. More than one, they divide it for however many tenants there are on the lease, up to 4. So how do I say that when advertising and doing pre-screening and taking applications? I did ask on the pre-screening if they'll be renting alone or have friends to rent with them, who are also required for screening. So when we were managing student rentals, what we would do is advertise in a couple different places. The most popular places were the groups on Facebook tailored to that school. There were groups of people always looking for apartments they had like University at Buffalo apartment hunting groups, and you could post your listings in there and find tenants pretty easily that way. We would also post on Facebook Marketplace. We would advertise in the campus newspaper. We would advertise on bulletin boards around campus. Like, we would hit the campuses pretty hard if that's what we were trying to do, was get student rentals filled up. Usually what would happen is we would have a group of 4 students that would approach us for a 4-bedroom apartment. And then we would just proceed that way. We would go ahead and screen them all and go through the whole normal procedure the same way as we usually would. We'll get more into that in a second. One thing that we did not do was provide matchmaking services. And the reason we didn't do that is because we didn't want the headache associated with it. Just because we have made that connection between party A and party B, if party A and party B don't see eye to eye, they're going to be calling us and screaming because we were the ones who made the connection. So that was one thing that we would personally never do, would be get involved in the matchmaking side of things. The other thing that we would not do is list it for rent by the room. And the reason for that is twofold. Number one, there is an archaic law in New York State. I don't know if this law is actually still on the books. It used to be. I would have to go back and see if this was pulled when they did the HSTPA update or not. But there used to be a law on the books that stated that you couldn't have more than 4... this is going to sound stupid. You couldn't have more than 4 women's names on a deed or on a lease, unless they were related. 4 non-related women could not be on the same deed or the same lease. And it goes back to, believe it or not, brothel eras. They didn't want people starting brothels. So they had a law on the book to try to prevent it, as stupid as it sounds. I think that law's gone now. I hope that law is gone now. But the other thing that you have to keep in mind is if you're doing a by-the-room rental, in some states or in some municipalities, you have to be registered as a rooming house, a boarding house, something like that. You may have to change the tax classification of your property from, a single family to a boarding house or whatever. You've got to double check and make sure that whatever you're doing, you're following whatever the laws are in your area. So those are the 2 reasons that we were never interested in doing matchmaking services. It just became too complicated at that point. We would rather just have the tenants bring us, or have the applicants bring us a full group of 4 and then screen the applicants and place the tenants. The one thing I will mention is that you are going to need to screen all of these tenants. You're also probably going to want to get co-signers for all of these tenants, even though they are jointly and severally liable. And the reason I say that is because with our student rentals, especially with undergrads, we would have a lot of problems with rent's not getting paid on time and things like that, which made the cosigners that much more critically important. So make sure that you're doing the right thing by making sure all tenants are jointly and severally liable. Also do the right thing, make sure you get cosigners in place as well. Screen everyone, get cosigners for all of the applicants, just as an extra way of protection for you to sort of protect yourself. And then as far as the lease itself goes, the way that we would write the lease would basically be one lease per household with everybody on the lease jointly and severally liable. We didn't do individual leases. We didn't do by the room leases or anything like that. One lease with all 4 parties on the lease and all of the cosigners attached to that lease as well. That's the way that we did it. We felt that that was the safest possible way, and it gave us the most protection. On to our next question on what to do when a tenant leaves mid-lease. Tennessee landlord here, what would you do? Our tenant signed a 1-year lease and paid the deposit, first month's rent, and 12th month's rent. That I should say last month rent, because this makes it sound like they paid 12 months up front. So it's first month, last month, and security deposit were paid here, just so that we're clear as we're discussing. They paid that at the time of lease signing. The tenant moved after 6 months, leaving 6 months more on the lease. The tenant has asked for a refund of the 12th final month of rent, the last month of rent. So the first thing you're going to want to do is review your lease and see if there's a lease break clause. Take a look at that, see what your lease break clause is, if you even have one, and then go from there. Keep in mind that your lease break clause is not going to be the be-all, end-all. You do have state laws in a lot of instances that are going to supersede whatever your lease break clause may be. They may coincide. If there's a penalty for a lease break, you may get the penalty in addition to following whatever the state rule happens to be. In New York State, we have a duty to mitigate whenever someone leaves a unit or something like that. And essentially what that means is we have to make an attempt to re-rent the apartment to another qualified tenant to mitigate the losses of the outgoing tenant, if you will. So essentially, what we would have to do is list the apartment right away, work on finding a new tenant, and then once we have found that new tenant, we've got them secured with their security deposit and their leases signed. At that point, that's when we would perform the move out on the previous tenant. That previous tenant is responsible for any damages to the unit. They're also responsible for any rent up to the point of the actual day that you release them from their lease. And they're also responsible for the utilities up until that point as well. So until you've secured a new tenant, I would continue to hold on to that 12th month of rent as well as the security deposit, because you're going to need to be able to draw down that for rent charges, utility charges, and damages. All of that said, once you have secured that new tenant and you process the existing tenant out, you do have to do a security deposit disposition letter and make sure that you detail any damages, any rent charges, or whatever, so that the outgoing tenant understands what they're getting back, if anything. Realistically, it sounds like they're probably going to wind up owing something here, but you have to account for that. That's also one of the laws in New York State, is you do have to send that security deposit disposition letter at the outset of the tenancy. I believe it's within 14 days now. So that's something to keep in mind as well. My serious recommendation here would be talk to your attorney just to make sure you're covering all of your bases. This is not something that you want to screw up on. It could cost you big bucks down the road if the outgoing tenant decides that they want to pursue it in court because you mishandled it or something like that. You could find yourself paying that tenant out more money than if you had just refunded them the last month in the security in whole without holding any of the charges back. So just make sure you know what you're doing when it comes to a security deposit disposition, and you'll be all set. That pretty much wraps things up for this week's episode of Ask a Property Manager. Thank you all so much for watching. We truly do appreciate it. We love producing Ask a Property Manager, and you can always help us to improve by dropping a question in the comments, either on Facebook or on YouTube, and your question may be picked up and answered in an upcoming episode. If you enjoyed this content, or if I brought some value to your day, do me a favor and hit that thumbs up button. YouTube and Facebook both push videos based on community feedback, so every like, comment, subscribe, and share helps us to grow and reach more people. We'll be back next week on December 1st. I can't believe we're already in December. We'll be back next week, Wednesday, December 1st, 10 a.m. Eastern, with another show you won't want to miss. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.